Okay, it's just a brief report. So we talked about mapping standard names to the IADOPT framework. So IADOPT was an RDA, that's Research Data Alliance group, that produced an interoperability framework for describing scientific variables. I was actually part of that group, but Gwen Monkwafe, one of the co-conveners of the hackathon, she was one of the co-chairs of the group. She and Alexandra Kokonaki, who was the third co-convener, they both work at the British Oceanographic Data Centre, and they manage the NERC vocabulary server. So that's the sort of background to it. What we'd like to do is map CF standard names to the IADOPT framework, because IADOPT can act as a kind of bridge to producing mappings to many other vocabularies. So not just mapping between pairs of vocabularies like standard names and GRIB, but anything else that's mapped to IADOPT, we could form mapping between them. So that's the reason for wanting to do that work, but it's at a very early stage. The main thing that came out of it, well, we had to go at doing a few mappings that caused quite a bit of discussion, and we realized it might be a bit harder than first meets the eye. But what we're going to do is form a CF working group, essentially, to keep working on this. And that group will meet on Zoom, possibly monthly, to try and move that work forwards. Anybody who is interested in joining that group and is interested in mapping is welcome to email me, and I'll invite them on to the meetings, and we'll just see how that goes. One thing I would like to do is give a bit more prominence to the fact that standard names are already regularly published in the NERC vocabulary server. It is an official copy of standard names. I want to put some more information on the CF website to make that clear to people. And that's another place people can get standard names from. And what's great about it is that you can have links not only to the list of standard names, but you can have URLs for individual terms if you want to refer to them, and have a machinable way of referring to individual standard names. So that's one of the advantages in publishing there. But it also gives us a mechanism for, once we've created the IADOPT mappings, of actually serving those to the community. So we don't have to set new things up on the CF website to do it. We kind of get that for free through our involvement with the vocab server. So that's basically where we're at with that. There's not much else to say, really.
Do it like this. Okay, so I'm summarizing the outputs of the housekeeping session, the GitHub automations and improvement session, and the extension session, I'll say, because nobody was working on DOIs for data sets. And we tried something new, which is why I'm showing what we've got here. So we tried something new this year, which was using a full-on project. And as you might guess, we did not finish everything that we thought might be useful. And what we adopted here was an approach that allowed us to kind of optimize the in-person and remote presence, and allowed us to work together fairly well, I think. We're using this board that I'm showing on the screen right now as a way of organizing our work. So what you see here is a bunch of items on the board that could be converted into issues and then associated with pull requests and then merged. So we're trying to produce changes very quickly, get them reviewed by somebody participating in the room at that moment or participating remotely, and get them merged so that way the outputs are already useful at the end of this meeting. And what you see here is, on the left, you always have an issue of some type and an assignee and a status. What I filtered out are all those that are done. So we have 15 things that actually got done and several things that are in progress. How does that look? Well, basically everything, if I filter out the done stuff, looks like this. So what people did was they chose things that they thought were relevant, pulled them into to do. So if I were logged in, you could just grab and pull. And then when you started working on them, you pull them into progress, self-assign, get to work. And when the issues got closed, they were done. That's all well and good. What is cooler to show, in my opinion, is what did we actually accomplish? So these are all the ones that have gotten done. I'll pull up a few highlights. So one, we're starting from the top to the bottom. I'll give a brief overview, and if you go to this board, you can see what's happened, so you can delve into the details yourself. Number one, Andrew helped a lot to get the link checker back up and running for the website. So now our website is being checked for broken links, which means that periodically we will get issues raised that the links are broken, because there's still a little bit of work to take out the missing links. This works twofold. When you submit a pull request, there is a request for the analysis is run, and you can see the results. So you can see if you introduced a broken link, and this also runs on a weekly basis now. So that way, if an external link breaks without us having done anything, we get a message about that too. This will be annoying for a couple of weeks, and that will encourage me to do what I had hoped I would get to here, which is kill the last links that are broken. Other interesting things, now in all of the Markdown and ASCII doc documents, we have one sentence per line, which means if your screen isn't very big, then you have some weird text wrapping artifacts if you're working in, say, VI. But the nice thing is that we can track changes to the documents now with much higher granularity, and there's less likelihood that we'll introduce conflicts when working on the same sections of documents simultaneously. So that's pretty cool, I think. And that's been augmented by some things like removing some white space, which also leads to merge conflicts that don't actually signify any content conflicts. There's been some work on describing how we work with UD units, contributed by Lars and David, and that is ready for merging, but it's not merged yet because they're actually kind of the changes that should go through the 3-week process. So I've started the timer on those on the assumption that everybody's happy with them. You seemed happy and Lars seemed happy, so that's enough review for me. I'm not logged in here, but okay, so you got the 3 weeks. Some stuff was discarded. So for example, I had proposed long ago using Kanban for proposals to changes to the conventions. And after having played around with Kanban here, I thought it was very useful in a hackathon, but not necessarily useful in our day-to-day kind of continuous work. So I closed that out. If anybody feels strongly about it, you can reopen it. There are also some other issues that, let's see, difficulty finding lists of area types in standardized regions. A question was asked, we closed it. We now have style guides. There's a style guide for ASCII doc and for Markdown. It's in contributing.md. One of the style guide, the ASCII doc style guide is from ASCII doc, and the Markdown style guide is from Google. And they're all really in the sense of guidelines more than anything else. So you're invited to follow them. There's no CF police that will arrest you if you don't, but I think it will make our lives easier if we do.
Are there tools that enforce it? Or?
Unfortunately, no. No, we weren't able to find any scanner like for code that'll just make that happen.
And can you give an overview? Is it mostly 1 sentence per line? And
yeah, so let's see. This is really let's see. The more exhaustive one is from Google, and they're both short. Hold on a second. Reference style guides. What changed? This changed. So there's some high level stuff like document layout. The other thing is, yeah, Google recommends that you keep your line short, but doesn't have a set number of characters or anything. I think that's good. Trailing white space, bad. I agree. It's bad. Use the ATX style headings. Those are the ones that aren't symmetrical, so it requires the fewest number of changes in order to change heading levels or to change the length of a heading. For example, this is considered a bad practice. That's an example. Putting space around headings was another thing. So this has mostly been implemented. Using lazy lists was another suggestion they have that I think is very good. Sometimes we have numbered lists, but if we move the stuff around, ASCII doc will ignore it anyway. And then how to use code code blocks, and inline monotype. So most of this is already stuff that we're adhering to anyway. But this just gives us something to refer back to. And some places, in some areas, we are absolutely not compliant because in many documents we shorten our links. Good. In some documents we have inline URLs. Bad, but not bad enough that it was worth it to anybody to go through and really scrub the documents. So as you move forward, when we're reviewing pull requests, my advice would be to take a look and see if the style looks cohesive. And if not, then you can request changes. Yeah, the other exciting stuff, some of this stuff was here. I was fixing a mess that I made myself. Klaus improved the document build. So now when we mint a new release, the build of documents works with one version source. So it's very seamless, smooth, easy to do, and robust against errors. And then Jonathan kindly also incorporated the last missing mails from the mailing list archive into the mailing list archive repo. And yeah, that's it. So it's a lot of things that'll make our lives hopefully easier when working with conventions. Nothing really substantive, but I think that it's been quite useful. And what's also been interesting is the experience of working with this board. I thought that was a really good way of working together in a hybrid fashion. It made it very easy to gather around a problem, see who was working on what, work together, break apart. That made things nice and easy. Any questions, comments?
Question, the ASCII the style guides again, is that, so you added links to them, and you please use these in the contributing.md?
That's right.
And you made some changes in some files, but you didn't go through and like try to change things.
Well, some things are like the single line per single sentence per line, that's changed now. And otherwise, a couple of styling, like if you look into the pull requests, you'll see a couple of pull requests are devoted to styling, but there's been no global implement the style guide everywhere.
I guess one reason I'm asking about everything changing is if you did it throughout the conventions, made everything a sentence per line, and anybody who has an existing pull request on the old stuff is going to have to go through, and it seems like there might be conflicts and stuff that people will have to clean up, which might be harder. Because basically every file has lots of changes.
Right. That is definitely true. So that was why it was kind of the first action, because in the future, pull requests will be easier than they are now. We weren't aware of any pull requests that were being worked on actively. So that was implemented first so that we could move forward on that basis, because otherwise you just have conflicts left and right.
And there aren't open issues, pull requests currently?
Good question.
Just in relation to the style guide.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I think we were hoping to address some white space issues. Daniel had, I think, changed some white space within the text, like after like full stop. If there were two spaces, that would be condensed down to one, as kind of it should be. But in the case of trailing white space, we haven't quite got to fixing that. But that's the kind of thing that can be done via, quickly via some tool like text editor. So that's the kind of thing that can cause a lot of merge conflict that can be done all at once. So we're just trying to work out the best time to do that to avoid those merge conflicts, I guess.
yeah. Actually, Steve, you've been working on.
Yeah, it's more or less there, so we just need to tidy up that PR and it's, as
Yeah.
far as I'm aware, it's done.
Okay. The ones that are still open is the release procedure from you, David, and then temperature units, which we are discussing today. But there's UGrid, conventions, uncertainty, and I'm not sure what this is, but it's been open for quite some time, so I
I
don't
think
think
that's-
this is.
That should be. That's, yeah, that's closable. It's just
Okay,
stale.
okay,
It's a minor.
right.
It's housekeeping. Actually.
Now, because the text hasn't been changed, for the area, for things like if Ken's having trouble merging, then it's actually fairly straightforward to resolve that by rendering his document and then copy pasting it in with the new as a single. Like if I were to fix that merge conflict, I would look at the rendered version of both documents and then replace do kind of a visual merge, which GitHub facilitates, and then paste that stuff in. So I'd be happy to help out with that. I don't think that it'll be a big. I mean, it only really affects these few pull requests. And this is new material, so
Right.
that actually won't be affected by it. It's only if you're changing existing lines. Euclid. About this one. Okay, this one would have merge conflicts.
Yeah. Lots of things. Usage.
So. Voila.
All right, so on Wednesday, we had two compression talks. The first was by Brian, and Brian Lawrence gave a talk on lossless compression that had some overlap with the next talk that I gave on lossy compression. And the goal of those two was to kind of put the pieces on the battlefield. We were happy that lossless compression not much, if anything, needs to be done because all of that's handled sort of on the software side for now by the NetCDF library or by the Python library. It does the lossless compression and decompression. There are hints that might not always need to be done by those libraries, and so there could be room for discussion of metadata to encode where the lossless compression / decompression could be, but that was not the main topic that I will discuss. We talked mostly about lossy compression in the end, as intended, and the status of that just changed. I want to thank David for taking careful notes in the breakout discussion document. So if you go to the meeting page and you see the breakout sessions, there's a discussion document at which there's lots of personal comments that were typed in and mulled over during the discussion. And what you see here, so I'm not showing that, but what I have drawn from that is what you see here, reformatted as a in vitro proposal for a lossy compression metadata. So how we're going to encode the properties of lossy compression that's been applied to data variables. And the reason that's an issue, and so if you have any questions, just talk to David Hassel. He will set you straight. Okay, so kind of going a little out of order, just to show you that we have typed into some of these issues. The benefits of adding metadata to describe the lossy compression algorithms and how they were applied, meaning the input parameters, and the extent of the distortion that algorithm caused to the raw data. The value of that is that currently that's kind of unknown. There is a need by users to understand how much their data has been distorted. And so we agreed on some principles here at this meeting, including controlled vocabularies, the input parameters for these algorithms, and optionally, I think, metrics to describe either how those algorithms are intended or guaranteed to perform that can be computed a priori before applying the algorithm, and a posteriori algorithms or post metrics that you could compare you could record a summary statistic of the lossily compressed data versus the original raw data, some scalar, for example, and the stakeholders therefore are data repositories because they're storing less data and they're storing the information that they need to remember how that data has been processed. I think that NIP organizers, I called them out, and downstream users, of course, of the data to enhance the clarity with which they're interpreting the data. Status quo, this is maybe could use some beefing up. I just mentioned that there's one piece of metadata that the NetCDF library currently writes out when it performs lossy compression. And it lacks some of the desirable properties that we're going to need downstream, like extensibility for other types of codecs besides quantization compression. It lacks any kind of notion of a controlled vocabulary or the algorithm provenance. And other than that, I don't know that there is any standard way that has been applied to CF compliant data sets of encoding the lossy compression. If you do, please bring it to my attention and we can put that in the status quo.
Is it worth mentioning linear packing?
So I mentioned that last year and it was a big flop. I mean, meaning no one wanted to touch linear packing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just that there is already a way of
Encoding.
a
Lossy-
form of lossy compression. but
Lossy compression.
It's not going to help us here. I guess it's maybe is that worth noting.
That's status quo. The
Yeah,
status quo is that there is something other
But
than
it's only for one algorithm and it's
not a good-
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. You know, yeah, I think that's worth doing to give this more polish for sure. Because it is kind of self-explanatory once you have those scale, factor, and add offsets. That's kind of all you need to know about.
actually, but it's different because with packing you have to do something when you read the data set. Whereas this you do nothing.
Yeah, maybe it's too off topic. I mean,
it is, yeah.
I think it is
I don't
too.
understand it.
Okay, do you take it back? Can I have that 30 seconds back?
I put it in writing, but I take it back, but then it's in writing there.
So, flip up here. David has agreed to moderate this proposal as it evolves. It's just, really, this has been weekly addressed. The bold-faced text here is stuff that we know, that I know needs to be fixed, such as links. So I give a kind of a overall discussion that we discussed this here, and that is why the decision was made to post this already on the proposals repository rather than the discuss repository, because we know it's going to turn into a proposal. And so hopefully it metamorphs into one down at the actual text of the proposal header, which for now says TBD. And so the overview is that we'll give a background a pointer to the background that I gave in my talk, so to that PowerPoint, and it will give a link to those notes, the raw notes that David took. And we need to fill in those links. And then I try and get to the I give a hint that there's actually something that's been done. We came up with 4, by my count, candidate schemes of encoding the metadata. And they're below, but I wanted to discuss why the schemes look like what they look like. And so first, I give this overview of the 6 pieces of information without attaching fixed names to those pieces of information. So that's why this is all just body text. In the next section, where I introduced the consensus that we should use controlled vocabularies, or CVs for short. Then I attempt to use code font to indicate that these are the current candidate choices for these pieces of information. And so if you think that family should be changed to something else, like this is just the this is the descriptor, and this is the syntactic representation of what that describes. If you think these should change, then by all means, that deserves a comment in this issue. And so there are 6 up here, and I just kind of assigned them provisional names that we've already talked about. These 2 at the numbers 5 and 6, I didn't want to use a priori and posteriori metrics as a name because it's just too highfalutin. And so I called them prior and post metrics. If you come up with better ideas, suggest them in a comment or whatever. And then I thought it would be useful in sculpting the proposal to fill in the controlled vocabularies for the 3 lossy algorithms that are currently in the NetCDF library. Like that would start it off. And then anyone with another lossy algorithm that they want to add the controlled vocabulary with can kind of template off of what we've done for those 3. So I'm going to restrict my attention to those 3 for the purposes of that proposal, and anyone else is, of course, welcome and encouraged to add controlled vocabulary extensions for their own proposals, either before or after the proposal is discussed and voted on. It might be nice to have a different, lossy algorithm besides these 3, which are very similar, and they're all quantization algorithms. So they only use one value of the controlled vocabulary for family, which is currently either quantized or unknown. So for algorithm, there's 3: bit room, bit round, granular bit round. Somewhere I say the values are case insensitive with white space replaced by underscores. So I'm intentionally using different sorts of capitals and underscores to demonstrate that. So these are all legal. If you think they should only be one word rather than synonyms that are allowed in the controlled vocabulary, that is something that we should settle quickly. Because I love synonyms in a vocabulary so that you can say NSD if you want, but some CF people are very precise and would prefer it to show up as number of significant digits, not NSD. Whereas I'm a kind of use whichever you prefer person. So, but we should settle that quickly because I don't want to maintain a bunch of synonyms if they're not going to be used. I don't know what's used. Other controlled vocabularies, I suppose, include things like latitude names, right? You got degrees north or values of units for latitude, degrees north or degree N or things like that. So I think there's precedent for it. I just don't know if it's preferred or not. Okay. So the controlled vocabulary for parameters. For these 3 algorithms, there's really only 2 parameters for the 3 algorithms. But there's some synonyms. Here's keep bits, which makes kind of good intuitive sense. Or number of significant bits. I use them interchangeably. And so I think they're both fine. So for prior metrics, maximum relative error. We know the formula, just have to type it in text format. Maximum absolute error, same thing. Post metrics could include really any scalar statistic that arises from the inner comparison of two fields. Certainly any scalar statistic should be allowed. Whether or not you want to make room for things that are not scalars, I'm not gonna die on that hill. I would sooner eat nails and than go in that direction personally. So someone else is going to have to lead that charge. And so those could include single metrics like a mean absolute error, single noise ratio, blah, 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 blah. You can think of more. And then I mentioned the desirable traits of really clarity, legibility, parsimony, non-redundancy, call it what you will. We don't want to overwhelm the existing important metadata with a bunch of new metadata for lossy compression, is my point in this paragraph. And then we come to the candidate schemes themselves. And I'm right now, as I was called up here, I was trying to add one little hash that sort of summarizes how this scheme differs from the other schemes. I think each of those schemes needs sort of a single line summary of what it does differently, its approach. And I only got to the first one. Single attribute with key value pairs of properties. But then there's these other, and I'm probably going to renumber them. Data 1, data 0 become data 1 so that people can say the first scheme and not mean data 0. And that is where things stand. So two of these were, I think, load the metadata into the variable metadata. And two of them were use a control variable for at least some of the metadata. And so that was the main distinction between these four schemes, and then each one was kind of a variant of either the control variable or no control variable. And there you have it. That's where things stand. And now if you would all stand up and walk like chickens, I'll know that I've got you into a state of obedient somnolescence.
I can only do turkey.
So what, can anyone else, can we make it so other people can edit this actual draft?
Anyone can.
Oh, good.
Anyone with permissions.
Because I don't want to be the only one who can edit this, because there's already typos and things I can see. Okay, that would be appreciated, because I know sometimes it's hard to get into something unless you have something small that you can manage, and there's plenty of small things to manage here.
Once discussion started on what is there, you shouldn't change it.
Okay.
Because it invalidates comments that were made.
Okay, so wait, we won't allow comments yet?
Comments, yeah. You've been editing what is
I meant editing this, exactly what you're looking at. The initial description and justification and vocabularies.
put a comment in asking not to comment as the original post still being edited a bit.
Okay, so I
If
can,
somebody stumbles across it and starts
okay,
having,
yeah, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's still possible for people to edit this.
I've
And
already, yeah,
I'll,
put the links in.
we'll add a comment, or someone else can add a comment. Please don't add a comment until we fire the starting gun.
Yeah, until they stop doing it.
Okay. See, that would be something that you could do right now, any of you. Who's going to take the bait?
We'll get rid of every 3 comments coming in.
Yeah. So eventually, I guess what we will see, we're going to discuss, we're going to open it up for comments, but some of the comments have to be, I like number 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then we have to, when enough of those come in, we have to remove the others, right? And draft the proposal and fill in the detailed proposal. So I'm a little unclear how your statement about, don't allow comments because that will invalidate previous, don't allow changes because that will invalidate previous comments. We know this is going to change. Like there's no detailed proposal because we don't have a consensus on which of these 4 we're going to go with. Kind of a chicken and egg thing here.
I mean, what needs to be edited here, other than you're gonna renumber and maybe put in a little comment for each of them to each of the options?
Yeah,
We could just leave it as it is, that section.
yeah,
Comments, and then in the solid, whatever the proposal thing, that's where you start drafting
okay.
actual text and where it goes in the document.
Well, sure, if you see it that way, that would work. That would satisfy.
He was
You know.
the expert, though.
I was writing a comment to say don't comment.
Do as I say, not as I do. Okay.
What is this? A few days or something.
Well, we don't know, do
Let's leave it.
we? I mean, it could start the biggest firestorm since temperature.
I'm guessing, I mean, we can just leave it and you can make those little edits. Which
Okay.
aren't that big, they're not that significant.
not that
People can just comment on, instead of editing this with,
Okay.
to change things, just comment on whether we think we should change it. And then maybe, I don't know.
So I want to say when we lift the gates, when we open the floodgates for comments, I want to ask people, I think I did in the top paragraph, let us know. We encourage interested researchers to indicate their opinions on any schemes they think are especially promising or poisonous to CF. So they're the ones they want and ones they really don't want.
So those can just be comments.
Yeah, those can be comments. So that's,
Who is going to moderate this? Me.
And isn't like,
And the discussion expected is just about the proposals of the different schemes. Among other things. I mean, you want the people of David who you want to edit the different schemes in terms of the comments.
that's how iterative feedback works. I don't see how we can avoid that. But we can pretend, for the sake of ending my presence on the podium, that these are the 4 that are it's gonna be one of these 4 and it's not gonna change, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna change.
well, isn't
That
that
is-
the role of the moderator to, at some point after a bunch of discussion, kind of summarize and then update? So is this what you update?
No, you have a new post saying, okay, maybe it's stalled or something, or it's useful. Here's where we are. Here's what I think are the main points that have been made.
Uh-huh.
That's it.
As a comment. but-
Yeah, as a comment.
As a comment.
Okay.
But what, and then who puts in this, whatever the bottom thing in this
Oh.
country is, the solid
Yeah,
detailed proposal?
proposal.
Well, that's really, I think, that's no different than the associated pull request in reality.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
either one of these.
It's both of those are just a link to the PR.
Oh, I
Really.
thought we spelled it out in here. Saying, in chapter 3.1, we're gonna add this after the second paragraph. I mean, some of them are like that, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true. You can in detail summarize where you're, but not the actual changes. That is useful, I think.
Anyway, no.
Yeah,
Comments?
other,
Oh, just one thought maybe, if you scroll up to the four options, so to speak.
yeah,
Are they kind of, are they just written out as they are there? I'm just wondering if it would help to give them, number them so that it's clear when you're discussing them, you don't have to kind of.
Okay,
describe
yeah,
the
I'll put a,
sentence.
like, yeah, I'll enumerate them. 1, single attribute. 2,
That
do
sort of
that,
thing,
yeah.
just to make discussion a bit easier.
Yep. Good point. Good point, because we want to,
The name of the variable, so use data 0, data 1.
we're going to change that to data 1 for
So they'll
1,
match.
so they'll match.
Good point.
I don't care if it's data 0, but it's probably not going to be data 0 in the pull request. It's just, that's the way it started out.
When I was typing these, I did start with data 1 or full trend programming. Then we came up with one that seemed like it should go at the top. So that's the only reason to turn it to 0.
Okay, yeah, the pull requests probably have different names.
Yeah.
And like consistent with the rest of the,
Well, there'll be only one option.
Right.
yeah,
It'll just be data.
data. All right, sounds like we're on the same page. Thank you.
Did we actually do something with the data one? Oh, no, we
We
decided, well,
decided
yeah,
not to do it.
okay, that was during the discussion, but we can review.
There was discussion about whether we should put something in the FAQ to say, if you want to do this, then use a suitable conventions for that. But I don't think we decided whether we should explicitly name ACDD or not.
So who's going to decide? Oh, but then we are going to put an FAQ in.
So the discussion in the Google Doc was, should we put anything in? And my last comment in there was, well, since we're discussing it, then that implicitly implies we should say something about it because of the issues being raised. So we should say that you should use something, a convention other than CF to handle that. But as I said, whether we decide to explicitly endorse one or not, I don't know.
What would be really good then is if somebody puts an issue up on the website to add an FAQ. If anyone wants to do that.
Okay, here's, sorry, did we already advance past this? This is the text from the Google Doc?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus GitHub.io.
It's it's yes, sorry, yes. Are you going to do that, Steve?
Yeah.
What was, he's comment on it, has other objectives in DOI? What were the objectives? And I'm not sure. Sorry. The ACD 1.3 only has ID, but ID has other objectives than DOIs.
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
But that's not what he meant.
and I was confused by that too, and he said it would cause problems in some software, and I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but I got to follow up.
I'm not sure trying to remember what the original author meant when he said.
Yes, because they were using, well, it did say that they were using the ideas.
Yes.
We want to
I
use-
just noted that this is already a very long discussion, but it's still ongoing. Like there's really the need, like from users, to know what they can write in the global attributes to retrace the data, because it's not there. But yes, it is not really clear if ID is the right place to put a DOI or what to put there. I think that's then there needs to be maybe from ACD the clarification, or even from the CF community, like what
I'll just say,
would be the recommendation. Yes, but
when the ID description was first written, there weren't DOIs. So but I don't know that. So I
just
don't know.
again, yes, just a few days ago, again, there's a long discussion. Like it goes, I just now read it. Like it's since 4 years. Like it goes about this citation attribute, how you can put this, and if you put the ID from the ACDD, or if you add another one, a tracking ID, or like a global attribute DOI. So it's
Where is this discussion happening?
On GitHub, I'm just I'm putting you the link. I just read this now, chat. Well, let me have a look here. So.
Twenty 2019.
And then it was also mentioned, mentioned in the for planning the 2020 CF meeting in Santander. And so it's quite so I was not aware that this is such an old issue and controversy issue, but as it's controversial, it maybe shows that there's really a need to address this.
Yeah, I think the question that we kind of came to was, but should it be CF that addresses it?
We agreed it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. We agreed it shouldn't be CF that addresses this.
So I guess if it causes controversy, maybe they shouldn't be anything in the FAQ that either, or just say,
Yeah,
it's based on other conventions
Right.
such as ACDD,
right.
without saying
Yeah.
what it should be, because that needs to be more clear through ACDD.
Oh,
Mm.
right, and here's the, yeah, okay. So I guess the goal here was to summarize and not rehash, so maybe
So
we kind of talked about it enough. We're not going to do anything in CF. If somebody wants it clarified, then reaching out to ACDD is probably the thing to do.
And we have
yes.
And we had a volunteer, you know what you said?
Mark Headley volunteered.
Oh, Mark Kelly
4
volunteered.
days.
All I heard was somebody else say that he had volunteered. I didn't actually hear it.
Yeah, we said it in the chat.
No, it's in the Google.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's saying.
Did he actually enter it though?
That's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
important.
yeah, it's in the Google Docs, and it's just a comment, I think it's from Mark.
No, I think it was,
Okay.
I think it was from somebody. It's good enough.
So are we,
He
so
said it.
are we not even putting anything in the FAQ now?
Well, no, we should put something in the FAQ
Right.
that at least says that CF isn't gonna handle.
Yeah,
it.
okay,
Right.
fine. I'll continue writing with
So if
you.
people wonder
Okay,
how
great.
they're gonna you know that you have to-
Any clarification on the. Yes, we can discuss.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's enough for the dataset DOI discussion here, or summary, or whatever we call it. And the next one was the so, oh, right. It's, and license deal. We not have a page for. Where's the DOI? Oh, wait. We had a document for. It wasn't in here, right?
All right,
Does anybody remember where we talked about? Oh, yes, I thought there was another.
If you go to the parent folder for hackathons, it's license/DOI. I think that's what you're looking for.
Oh, you're right. I don't know why I got distracted by the license and. Yeah. I was thinking of DOI and forgot about license. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Let's see. So, did we write down a conclusion? Actions. Oh, this is for the DOI. We didn't really come up with an actions for the license, did we? Or did we?
No. We moved to the citation thingy,
Right,
just because they start asking why the reason for the license, sorry, the DOIs.
right.
Because it was conditioning, what I say, it was conditioning the license itself.
Okay, so we talked about various things with DOI, CF DOI, and he was going to put together a PR to create a .zenodo.json file with the metadata to start defining the metadata that we're going to use. And then we got to the
Technical aspects.
the technical aspects of how to actually make Zenodo and what it should archive and where things would reside and how it would work. And so there were some GitHub actions that we can develop. So the next steps are to look more at the GitHub actions and start writing GitHub actions and making it work and figuring out, making sure we understand how it works.
Figuring out, yes, it's what was. And integrating to the process of publishing.
Right, yeah.
Because there is a process of publishing, but at the moment it's just quite ad hoc from daily making that process. Maybe we need a special documentation or kind of how the publication process is currently working.
Investigate GitHub actions.
Yeah. To encode the actual process, if you want to say, I don't know, publication process.
FYI, we have a GitHub Actions expert in the community.
Who is the expert?
Sadie, you mean? No, Frank. Yeah. Right.
He's got a pretty.
That's the then.
No.
Just put there.
Okay, and then figure out how it current release process.
Yes.
Right, whoops. Okay. Were there other things? Oh, and then there were a few things here, I think, add site CFF or something like that.
Citation.
Citation, I see. And then add some text in the website to right, so okay. Do we want to?
What about the license?
Yeah.
The actions, I mean,
For what?
the action itself about the license. I mean, there is the last comment about using the CC0, the public domain one, proposed to that, but
We didn't actually get very far with that. I mean, I think.
I mean,
the governance
need to
panel
think-
kind of said, well, this is what we're, just. Do we want to rediscuss or do we want to just move forward with that? And
I mean, I will include try to consider the CC by. Just because the purpose of having DOIs is just to have reference, solicitations. And I don't know if as a community, we want to kind of to obliging once the people just citing the DOI, just to have a kind of, I don't know, you need more conversations inside of the governance panel or not.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, I feel like we've talked about this a fair amount in that issue over the last few years. And the governance panel
Say that is
said, let's not keep revisiting, let's do this.
okay.
So maybe we should just try to, so
Yeah,
we just
no,
need.
yeah.
Go to move to the implementation stage. here.
Yeah, right. So I think we still kind of need, we didn't really do anything in the hackathon, but we need to
Yes, go to the
figure
next
out
step.
how
You need
to,
move forward this and just to make
how to, yeah,
license
include
to public domain.
CC0 in website and in the convention document.
Yeah.
Include or reference or whatever it is. Oops.
Ship 7, probably.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Thank you. Like, uh-oh.
No, okay, I just imagine doing it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all muscle memory, isn't it?
So those are the actions from those two, this discussion, the license and DOI. Okay,
Okay.
I think that's it.
That's all. I think we are missing something. No.
I think that's it.
Antonio Banderas.
Antonio, what? Sorry.
And there's.
Yes.
He's
There's
spelling,
the,
right?
there's the copy.
Yeah.
He's coming.
He's coming.
I called him.
I think David had a suggestion to remove essential files from the main repo to a separate repo that is actually what the one that's published.
So
You mean I think we figured out how to do it in the convention. You mean the DOI publishing to Zenodo stuff. I think the GitHub actions allow us to control how it's done from the conventions document or repo.
Yes, we can map in the GitHub actions the process of publishing the document itself. We are not obliged to follow the release GitHub action before this, and we can adapt the GitHub actions. Yeah.
All right, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We are starting just the final part, just wrap up. I mean, there was action from the hackathons and so on. I'm just taking a few minutes and just making the briefing of the registration and so on. Not too much about what's. Just give me 1 second. I don't know if the people in the Zoom is hearing. Is okay, the sound?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Klaus. Just about the registration of the workshop. This year was a little bit more limited. I mean, not too much because the previous years was 120, 130 registrations. This time has been 100 exactly, the registration. We had people from 17 countries. Something curious this year has been the other way around. There was more registrations from Europe than from North America, always. Canada, USA, and Europe. This includes Germany, UK, France, and so on. There was, because was local, there was more from Spain in the case of Europe. This is just registration, okay? This is the declaration of intentions, because the registration doesn't cost money, that's okay. I mean, there's no problem with that. But as Alison was saying, that there was a 60% of people that was registered, was participating in the training, but in the case of the workshop, I will show you later, sorry, but there was some 37 people from North America, 50 from Europe, and there was a little bit more from South America, Brazil and Argentina, just one from Argentina, 4 from Oceania, Australia and New Zealand, and I think I seen somebody in the participating from Australia for the NCI, I think. Yes, real one participating in the later in the plenaries. And there is 5 others from Middle East, Saudis one Saudi, one Iranian. I don't know 2 other than there was one the KSA country, I think is South Korea or not. I don't know. Yes?
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. The kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Yeah, there was then 2 from Saudi Arabia. Yeah. And 2 unknown because there was a test country and the other one was. Maybe there is a, yes. Again, we have the time zone challenge again, but there was people and there was also, for example, Francisco from Hawaii was also participating and also from Canadian and North America. I think at least we success on this. But again, there is a low registration from Latin America and from Africa. From Africa, there is, if I'm not wrong, was nobody, right? Because there was some from, nobody from Asia either. Then. So I was thinking Korea, but nobody from Asia, nobody from Japan, but nobody from Africa. Because we have better from South America this year, but no one from Africa, no one from Asia. These are just numbers, okay? It's just a matter of we are not reaching other regions of the globe. I mean, CF is for everyone around the world. It's something that we don't manage to reach, okay? Yes or no? Yes, this is for governance. Thinking or also for, I mean, I don't know if it's for training or not, or dissemination activities and so on. I don't know what exactly how to reach.
Training is a good point. You should try and
Training.
advertise it.
Training, but I think also there is a problem with pushing the news. I mean, the event to make the announcement of the event. But I mean, you're right. I mean, training. I will show you just one curious about this, but training has more success than the workshop itself. I will show you later. I will show you right now. Because we have 20 on site, okay, participants. Well, from the 20, there was 6 locals because we have plenty of people, 11 locals to say that we are going to participate because from the university there was a lot of, there was, I think, 11 registration on site, okay? But the actual participating there was more or less 6, okay? But something that is curious is about this year, there was 40 to 50 participants in total in plenary sessions, okay? Between locals and remote for plenaries, okay? But something curious has happened in this, I mean, the hybrid participation has been a challenge, and probably the people that is right now in the Zoom can make their opinion about how was the sound and the participation and so on. But something that I have discovered this year is the hackathons. Okay, I don't have the figures, but has been a low online participation. Okay, there was maybe Oscar or Juan Antonio, so you can correct me, but I think we have, I don't know, two people in most of the hackathons online, 2 and 4. Yeah, very low numbers. I mean, apart from the local people. Okay, sorry, for the on-site people. We have a low participation from remote. The plenary has been, I'm happy with that. It's a 50%, between 40 and 50%. It's less than the 60% we had for the training, because we have a 60% of the people participating in the training, but we have a lower number on the plenary. 50, 40 on plenary is okay. It's nice. But the hackathons this year has been very low. Previous hackathons, previous breakouts meetings and so, there was a lot of more participation online. Okay, I don't know why. It's just a question for everyone. Okay, so just to know why is the reason this year in the breakouts on the hackathons there were less participation from online. I don't know, maybe it's because the topics we are covering or not, or because the topics is quite different this year from the previous one. Okay? Just is my opinion, just for thinking about it. These are the topics. Okay, just comments on this. Just my impressions. Just about the slides and videos. This year I have recorded everything. I have been streaming on the IFCA YouTube channel, but we need to decide what to do with all this stuff. And also I have recorded the videos from the plenary sessions. But about the hackathons, I think it's not going to be useful. This is my opinion. The hackathon, because there was a lot of discussion, cross discussion over the mic, and I don't think it's going to be very useful. It's my impression, okay? For the plenary, I will try to edit them and just to put them on Google Drive or whatever. We need to decide if we want to move to the YouTube CF channel just to have there, or left here. I don't know.
Can use the channel.
Yes, I don't have a strong opinion. It's just, we can let there or here or whatever. But my intention, is just to put the links in the web page of the meeting. I just link from there the talks, at least for the plenaries, and also the videos, or at least one. When I discovered how to edit the videos in YouTube, because you can point at precise times in the video where the talk is starting, right? As I say, the hackathon has been recorded, but no intention. I don't have intention to publish it. Just have been recorded. I'm going to publish that just because of that. And just a small comment, just has been 3 tries just to bring the workshop here to Santander, starting in 2020. And this thanks to COVID again, just to be able to do it this time. And I don't know if you discovered the landscape of Santander, just, because again, not too bad, the weather. I was more skeptical about that, but it has been okay. Too hot, too warm, too much humidity, but it's okay. Okay. Always, I want to ask these questions. What would I have missed, or would I make an organization and a meeting and so on? I don't know how we want to make the feedback. The natural way is doing in the discussions in the GitHub. I suspect just to have all the comments over there on the agenda and so on. What we are missing from the workshop, again, this is the same questions as the previous meetings. So we are missing. We are missing some topic discussion on the hackathons, on the breakouts, or so on. And also, what we are expecting, we are missing from the general discussion. Interesting things has happened this year is about the training. The training has been very nice. Has been very. I find it as an interesting thinking. And I think the reason because the people wasn't in the hackathons is because the training probably, but that's my impression. Again, it's an opinion, because many people in the hackathons on the breakout room go there just to learn things, and then they take that from the training, because But it's an opinion, again, that's my evaluation of the sequence. And then the next question is going to happen the next CF workshop. I understand that, yes. We don't know how, or because the funding from the ECE is lost. I mean, lost, I mean that there's no more. Just March of 2023 is finishing the project, and we need to find something to funding this thing. But we can find some way, and please comment now, write down the Google Doc. But I think the right place to do this, and just remember, if I'm not wrong, in 2020, we don't have the full deployment of the GitHub thing. And just right now, the GitHub is working in a full forward, and everything is happening there. And we have discussions on there, okay? Just put the discussion on the issues of the agenda, the workshop, and so on. I think it's the place to do it, in fact, okay? Or maybe you have some comments right now, or not. Oh, sorry, there's a comment? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Andrew, I missed. Yes, it is the science never sleeps from Andrew. Yes, and Andrew, I think, is from Canada, no? Right?
No, he's from.
No.
Sorry.
San
San Diego, sorry, yes, from San Diego Scripps, right, yeah. For hackathons, I felt that I could not contribute much, as this is a new subject for me. Yes. Yeah, in the hackathons, something that I find is the people is participating. I mean, the previous hackathons and breakouts in the previous workshops, the people were connected and were listening there, but this time, nobody was connecting, neither. That's my question. That's my point on all this stuff.
I mean, you
Yes.
had quite a few veterans connecting and participating online. So Andrew was contributing and not sleeping as usual, as well as Klaus. So those guys,
Yes.
of course, they're old hands here, so they know how to engage.
Yes, no. I mean, there was. I mean, the two ones that were in the hackathons, they were contributing, yes, but then nobody else was on the meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, Klaus?
Sorry, maybe
No.
I can first say I think it was a very nice workshop. The talks were inspiring and very interesting, and I would have loved to be with you there in Santander. And well, I hope to be there at the next workshop. I thought for the talks, as I said, it worked generally very well. One thing that was a bit problematic sometimes was comments or questions from the audience. I would recommend that next time maybe the speaker can generally repeat the questions before answering them. That will make it easier to follow online. For the hackathons, I could see that there was a lot of discussion in the room, which is great. But that came over online then when everyone was trying to work for themselves, just as a rather confusing mixture. So usually when I wasn't myself contributing to the confusion, I was just switching off the sound on my end. But I don't have a good answer on how to improve that. I think it was still very nice to have these hackathons and to make some very tangible progress on the practical problems that we have. So I think overall it was very good.
Yes, thank you, Klaus. About the plenary, about the questions in the audience, we tried to put the sound because we have two speakers in the middle of the room. And we put them just to try to, if somebody is speaking in the room, just hearing him or her, sorry. But I think, as you say, sometimes it didn't hear very, very well, okay? Then we need to work better on that in the hybrid approach. In the hackathons, the hybrid approach, I know that is not working because there's a lot of chatting. The hybrid approach, I mean, okay, it's not working just because the people in the room is speaking just as normal or regular, and then the problem is the people that is outside online, that is too noisy for them. It's quite difficult to fix that. I don't know how to have a kind of 3D sound, real, I don't know, virtual experience, because it's quite immersive experience. It's quite difficult, I think, the sound. I mean, I didn't expect, because I have experience with when I'm giving my classroom teaching and so on with the PC with approach, and it's impossible unless you have an on terms just the people speaking. It's not as dynamic or than interactive as having in on site. I think it's something very difficult to fix. That's my impression. And then, as from the comments, we need to improve all the in-room questions when there's somebody speaking in the plenaries or talking or asking, sorry. And for the hackathons, it's quite difficult to fix. This is my impression. I don't know if there's more comments on this or not. Ideas.
I have a separate comment. Basically, where to for the next from here is I get the sense that people expect these CF workshops to continue. Fine, but as you mentioned, the funding is running out.
Yes.
And so it's the obvious thing to think about is, I think for the executive committee, is to get out ahead of that funding desert before the CF workshops can't be held next year because there's no funds. So I hope that, I mean, is as obvious as it sounds, and is being discussed by the executive committee. I don't think it necessarily needs to be discussed here because it could go on forever. But,
yes.
Yeah.
And just one comment about that. We did have some conversations when we were planning this. We had said maybe we could alternate between fully virtual meetings and in-person or hybrid meetings, which will be next year with the virtual meeting. So it could go ahead because it wouldn't involve traveling. I mean, that I think the reason for saying that was because we did get so many more people at the virtual workshops, and it was a good way of spreading the word about CF.
Yes.
Seem to have a good attendance compared to past face-to-face meetings. It's always the same, fairly smoothly, and to try and keep that attendance up.
Yeah,
Seems like, and it's also more environmentally friendly because we don't travel. We only travel once every 2 years. So, but that's not. You still need to know what to do after that. It gives us a bit more time.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alison. The experience with the virtual when we did in 2020 was very, very nice, because I remember the first workshop that I was attending for CF that was organized by Ethan in Boulder. Was in Boulder, right? Was very difficult to participate from remotely, because I was asking Ethan if they are going to make online and so on and making questions about that. And was almost impossible. But right, the 2020 was a good start point because the COVID. But was good because there was a lot of registration, participants, a lot of activity. I mean, it's a good experience. And you say, and with respect to the funding, I mean, I know that, I mean, maybe this is changing tomorrow, okay? But I know that there is some actions in INES for the research infrastructure just to try to get some funding, but this funding is still in kind funding. And then one of the proposals is the CF and data management and so on. And the CF is inside of this umbrella. But again, it depends on the money. I mean, also, I can find some funding for celebrating here in the International University in Pelayo, but okay, I understand that we need to move to another time zone, the workshop, not to make always in the same place, but we can do that. I mean, it's also, but this is something that the governance has to decide. This is my understanding, because we can find, I mean, to organize in the university because there is funding from there or funding from the institute or this, but we need to decide that. And also, as Alison said, the virtual thing is a good option.
There was one other point that I wanted to make while we're all together, and that is to thank you for doing such an excellent job.
Yeah.
This is the next slide. No, sorry. There is a, no, this one. This is the thanks. Okay, I was expecting, yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I want to thanks to everyone for coming. That's the first thing, because for us, we are proud to people to come in here and to see some activity here, and also for me to see activities on CF, because I am quite supporter of this. Of course, the chairs and reporters of the hackathons, this because I know this is quite complicated. All the meetings that the CF workshop committee that we made just organizing this, because we have plenty of meetings doing, trying to organize, to find and fix things. Again, the hybrid workshop has been a challenge. Of course, I try to do the best for the sound, for the tribe, because it always is a challenge. Just again, comments on the GitHub issues, just put comments because just to improve this. And I want to thank that to Juan Antonio, because they were staying here. Today is holiday for them also. But I almost obliged them to come. Not me, but I will later. To Zeki, just behind, and to Oscar. They are PhD students, and they are obliged just to learn how the workshop is working and to learn what is going on, because I think it's interesting part of their support. And I am supporter of just two PhD students because they are the future of the CF community. So I'm pushing a lot of here in every place. Just start CF when you are doing your PhD, not after, just during. And working hard. And of course, the community and the people in the Zoom, of course, for participating, for coming, and the people especially that was living in a very shifted or drifted time zone, because there for us has a nightmare. It can happen things like the gig just didn't sound the alarm, and we miss him. Yeah, there is some comments. Yes, Taylor. Yes, sorry, Taylor. Carl. Sorry, Carl. I couldn't say it. No, I'm not. Okay, I'm not saying that the CF has to funding this. Okay, just the governance panel is the governance, and just to propose workshop or how it's going on, or just have ideas. It's just to find. I mean, in INES there is some kind of in-kind money for contributing to CF, and I know there is some plans in there, but it's not still there. Probably it's changing tomorrow, but we need to push on. To Ethan, who chairs the panel, yes, and I was suggesting because we can find funds to organize the workshop, but here in Santander, but I'm not happy neither to do that. Not because I don't want to do that, but I understand that the workshop needs to be organized in different countries. Okay. Okay, I will try to forward this, Carl. Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
So I don't think there were any solid suggestions of here you need to look here and here and here for money.
Yes.
It's just that we need to think about how to sustain the workshops.
Yes.
And Alison also pointed out that we were talking about doing a virtual one, alternating in-person hybrid with virtual. And so those would be way cheaper.
Yes, and it's way of sustainable. I mean, it's a way of
and more sustainable and all sorts of things. So there's a bunch there to think about and talk about.
Yeah, but it's something that I mean, I think it's for governance.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about that in our next meeting and brainstorm.
Okay,
thank you. We should extend our thanks to the staff organizing copies and
yes,
excellent.
Yeah, the food was amazing.
Yeah, well, the food was better than the previous one. Well, I don't know. I mean, sorry.
Relay our thanks to them.
Yes, I will do. Okay, because I was organized everything by the travel agency, and I will let them. Yeah, that was very nice. That was excellent. We were very happy with the food, the coffees, and so on. Okay, and for the Zoom You have Antonio Banderas, okay? This is the real title. You can find in IMDb, the Finding Altamira, and some secrets are too powerful to hide, okay? I think this slogan can be applied to CF.